Oh, it's loading. Okay. So what are we doing here? Are we hosting a collage making session? Or is that just for added effect? I swear we're doing news and interviews. What about those online exhibitions and galleries too? We are. Welcome to the Culture Club. I'm your host, Kimberli, and we're here to have a chat. So, you know what to do. Shall we get into it? Go on then. We are live. Okay, so welcome everyone to the artist interview series. Thanks for joining us today. We've got Jack here. He's an actor and a friend of mine, and a bit of an exhibitionist as well from the work that we've done. So let's get into it and find out who you are and what you do. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jack. As Kim said, I'm an actor, writer, exhibitionist, which I always find, like, once you said that, I always find it weird as a term phrase, because I always exhibitionist. I don't know why, but I always think of people being nude. So as soon as you said that, I was like, no, it doesn't mean that.
We'll do a calendar.
Yeah, I've got my own calendars. I'll put them up.
In the merch link.
Yeah. I've also trying to start a cooking Instagram. So me and my friend.
Are you? That's lovely.
Yeah, so me and my friend started that recently, which is it's fun, and we've done, like, he's started editing the video, but we can't do any more than the one video that we've done because of COVID and everything, not being able to meet up and being from separate households. So yeah, it's kind of a pain in the backside, that. But yeah, I guess that I'm trying to think of other things that I'm doing. I swear I'm doing a few other things, but so yeah, I'm just trying to get on with stuff, I guess, like most people.
You've been writing. When I first met you, you were telling me about some of your writing that you've been doing then. I mean, what have you been working on recently? What's the story behind some of the recent work?
So recently I have, over the last year, I have been working on a documentary and a one-man show. The documentary was it's based on a place called Fairbourne in Wales, which me and you worked on briefly. Was it last year or year before? It seems a while ago now.
Ages ago, yeah.
It was ignited from a Channel 4 mini doc that they do, where they were just looking at what was happening in the area. From there, I just sort of got fascinated about how this, basically, the government's decommissioning this small town because of where it's based. So it's based right at the summit of a mountain, and it's also along next to a river and on the seaside. So it's right in this little hole where by 2050 it's going to get flooded. So yeah, that's kind of it's quite disheartening, really. And I was talking to my friend about it recently, because I just realised I hadn't spoken to anyone, well, him predominantly, about it. Sort of he said, like, oh, it's shocking that the government can let people down in that way. And I think that is the main forefront of my thought about this, is to make it in documentary, is to sort of see why. Like, we pay, and it seems like such a naive thing to say, but we pay taxes, we elect people, and you'd like to think that you'd look out for your fellow man, and look out for anyone that is in trouble, disabled, poverty, or in this instance, potential flooding. And I think the fact that they've not even had, from my understanding so far, I've had a conversation, they've not even had an offer of some sort of financial return, like, this is towns being decommissioned and we're going to offer you blah, like half the amount of what your house is worth or something, or give you a house or somewhere else, or this is what we can do for you. It's kind of just like, this is tough, and we've given you a date, and because it's in 2050, you've just got to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite sad as well, because it's not the first time that the government's done it. When you think about what they did again in Wales for Liverpool, destroying again a whole town for a water duct or something like that, I believe it was.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite sad, really, and it's that whole thing of not looking back at our past again and trying to learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I want to try and make that into a documentary and
Yeah.
potentially something creative as well. And the documentary wouldn't just focus on Fairbourne, because that has sort of been covered. I want to sort of look at where else could be next, as
Yeah.
such, what
Yeah.
we'll lose, and what we could get, what we can lose with our culture, like these places that are of beauty as well,
Mm-hmm.
because of global warming, and who could be under threat next, because there's cities that will just be lost as well, which is quite
Yeah.
a sad thing as well. So yeah, that's something. Writing wise, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I have been writing a one-man show, and it's kind of about my life, and it was sort of just based on me growing up and naiveties and what I thought was okay to say, and now being, I guess it's sort of like a coming of age story, but I wanted to be quite brutal and open. I wanted
Yeah.
to be something that sort of like, I'm going to say things that will upset people, but it's not to upset people. It's to sort of go, we as a society are getting, for me, I feel like we're getting more polarized, and
Mm.
people who are far left and far right, and there's a
Right.
lot in between now. You're either one or the other, and you can't be in between, and you can't have like certain thoughts about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm really cold and I'm shaking.
That's
Like,
okay. You're fine.
so yeah, that's sort of, for me, I feel like it's something that people need to understand, that not everyone is one or the other. And though we look at things on the internet and look at how things have changed,
Mm.
and internet is this wonderful thing, and also this evil thing of giving us all this information,
Exactly. Yeah.
some true and some false. There are things that people seem to think that people can't change,
Mm.
and this whole thing of demonizing people because they've said something bad in the past. Like, for instance, the first one that comes to my mind is the comedian, short guy, black fella, American, really good friends with The Rock, Chris. Anyway, I've forgotten his name now. Just escaped my
Martin
head.
Lawrence.
Huh?
Martin Lawrence or the Kevin Hart. Sorry.
Kevin Hart. Yeah.
Yeah.
He said he made quite a few homosexual jokes, and so much so that he couldn't then host the Golden Globes, was it? I think
Oh,
it
I
was.
think I remember this. Yeah.
And his whole argument was, well, one, they're jokes, and also I said it in the past, like, can I not change as a person? And I don't agree with what he said. I'm just saying, like, I think this is a mentality that we've lost, and that's something that I'd
It's
like
a really
to look.
interesting subject because
Yeah.
I think it goes across many different facets of really our interconnectivity as people and within cultures.
Mm,
And I think those kind of things ultimately can be they can come around through people living in silos and groups of people kind of not really being educated, you know, um, and perhaps somewhat, maybe indoctrinated in a way, whether or not it's politically, socially, whatever. And it's those kind of things that can kind of lead people astray and allow their minds to kind of be somewhat, singular,
yeah.
rather Yeah, rather than looking at the broader picture of how their words or their comments and actions are really, you know, online and offline, are really affecting people.
Mm.
You know, everything. I mean, recently, over the past couple of weeks, I've been absolutely horrified. You know, it's 2021. Why are we still talking about there's no room for racism in football? You know, how are the families of footballers being abused online and everything like that? I just don't understand it. I just don't. And yet, you know, there are the same people that put so much pressure, and it's all about this cancel culture. Oh, you know, XYZ manager out or XYZ player out because they lost a game. You know, these are professional sports people at the end of the day. I would like to see the person who's trying to crucify them, you know, in their position, in this situation as well, being in lockdown, knowing that sports is being such a go-to activity for many, many people. You know, we need to really think about the mental health of those people on those platforms, and whether or not it's trolling or whatever, it is abuse, it is bullying, and you know, we can't really think that these people's performances or perhaps their past actions, you know, even as footballers, you know, having a scrap on a pitch or whatever, that doesn't mean that you know, you can't be thought of as a kind of, you know, fixing up, as it were, you know. I mean, I can give you a great example. I mean, Nicolas Pepe was absolutely, you know, he was completely, he shocked the audience really by, you know, having that red card, and you know, that was in, I think, the Europa, and he's now come back and everyone's kind of singing in his name. He's running down the left wing. It's like, oh great, you got that goal for us. They love him again. But you've got to, you know, you can't, this cancel culture or this trying to basically shut someone down and not give them any more opportunities. You
Yeah,
don't, you know, really get where you're coming from completely. And I think it's, this is a perfect time for a coming of age story, and it's really nice that you're using examples from popular culture. That's
yeah, it's quite interesting. You mentioned about football, because of the whole racism going towards. I know what you're talking about. The Manchester United players recently,
yeah,
and I think it's quite interesting. I know we're not supposed to be focusing on football, but this
no,
whole thing of how the limelight is so focused on these people because they are role models and they are getting paid millions per year to do a
yeah,
job that most people die for. And it's just mental how you have, yes, I understand it because I have been a victim of this passion. Like I follow Liverpool, and just it is so annoying, and you do get so passionate and you do get upset when your team loses, but
really sorry, by the way, about
yeah.
that. That
um,
was really bad. That was so bad. I felt so bad for Alison. I'm so sorry. I just have to
uh,
apologize.
thank you. So yeah, like those moments, like you do get upset and like, angry, and you're just, but there's no room for the racism, and I think that slogan is so true. But equally, we still have politicians calling out footballers. What was it, like a few months ago before Rashford did the whole
Right.
people who are poorer? I can't remember which one it was. I can't remember his name now. Um, but he said, what are footballers doing? Like, because they're still playing football. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, what are
Mm,
footballers doing? They're still playing football. They're getting paid millions. Why aren't they helping?
yeah.
Like, well, that's not their job.
No.
Like, that's your job, and
Yeah,
you're
it's
playing.
funny. Mm,
So yeah, I don't see why footballers as particulars are called out. I get why they're called out because they get paid so much money, but they are still human beings, and they are people that
yeah.
do have very high pressure.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Absolutely.
So
It's really strange that you mentioned that because it reminded me about the time that Channel 4 did a campaign about raising money for the nurses' wages. Do you remember this? About
When was
4
it?
or 5 years ago?
It rings a bell a little, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember um, like people were very honest and blunt, and it's true because I was quite, I can't remember who said it, but I was quite shocked when I heard the person say it. They said, well, it's not our duty to be paying the nurses' wages. And they are, I am again paraphrasing, but they're right. You know, they were saying, well, why are you coming to us? You know, we chose to be footballers. We didn't choose to be politicians, ultimately, you know. And so why there was this unequal comparison made you know, based on the fact of money, you know. But ultimately, I mean, the argument lies with the government and the budgeting and the healthcare budget. You know, I have to say, but the sports budget has got nothing to do with players earnings. Sports budgets and everything is going to leisure centres and activities and stuff like that. So that's a different thing. So, you know, sports people's earnings and sponsorship, whatever contracts, they're all separate. They're completely separate. You know,
And also they get taxed on half of what they earn. So
exactly.
that's quite an interesting thing to think about, which I never thought about until I had an interview with Troy Deeney recently
Right.
about, well, if you think about like a player who's earning like 225 grand a year, immediately half of that's taxed to the
Yeah.
government.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not excusing football players.
No, no, when it's not, when we're not, no.
I just don't feel that people should be targeted for reasons like that. Like
Exactly.
there should be more thought behind things, and there should be more time given. And I
Yeah.
guess like to circle back is what I'm trying to talk about is that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that that the people should be more open-minded.
Yeah.
Because I used to say awful things, homophobic, racist things when I was a teenager.
Right.
And I think it's that sort of thing of, I don't say those things anymore, but
Mm.
I was naive. Like where I grew up, there was one gay kid and one black kid in my school. And it's that
So
sort
they
of,
were singled out. They were singled out,
yeah.
weren't they?
And
Yeah.
it's like, well,
I was singled out for being like the only Irish person. Like I was 10 years old with a really strong Irish accent, and everybody thought, you know, let's just kind of pick on her.
yeah, exactly. And it's kind of that thing of like, I guess me and my mates like to, we didn't ever picked on anyone, but we said horrific things to each other. And because it didn't offend each other, we found it funny.
Oh yeah.
And there was no one to sort of object to it. And
Right.
that's not me justifying it. That's me saying I think that's where that school mentality comes from. I think
Yeah.
people are always trying to go like, oh, how do we get rid of racism? And I think it's kind of that hard thing of like, well, you need to we need it needs to be a change of mentality, and I think things are getting better. But back when I was a kid, it was like, well, none of my friends are black or gay, so who am I offending? So let's just take them.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think the argument of it being systemic and some of these other, you know, um, systemic issues, austerity, you know, equality and fairness really across the board. That's it ultimately at the end of the day. And I think that's coming, you know, there was no one there in that period really to kind of educate you or to say like no, like hello, you know. And it's really, really interesting. And I think now people are kind of pushing against that and pushing for change and realizing that there needs something needs to come from it. And I think ultimately kind of sharing a story will highlight and start so many new conversations
Mm.
because you know there is a certain responsibility of our elders, and we are also elders now to the younger generation too. So we do have that responsibility, but also it's about us really having I want to say having the strength and the power, perhaps the gumption to kind of stand up to others.
Yeah, and I also think media. I know we were just saying that like football, but media has such a strong play in it. Like,
Oh gosh, yeah.
like the music, the things that kids can listen to, can watch. Like when I was a kid, like there was a lot more whitewashing as well on TV, so there was hardly any black people.
Yeah.
And the people that I thought were cool, like rappers and stuff like that, they were saying it, and you just kind of like that emulating thing. You just want to say it as well.
Yeah.
So you're
And
just
there were like, and there were so many people that were misogynistic as well. Because I've just uncovered like a bunch of things that are subliminally misogynistic or microaggressions linked to language.
yeah,
And I couldn't believe it. It's, you know, so it's really, really interesting that there are so many subtleties over the years that were really kind of affecting these kind of social issues. Yeah. So that's it. So what's the story with writing the show? What's your plans for it? What are you hoping for?
So I finished the first draft back in first lockdown, and I've tried to go back to it a couple of times, but like because even talking to you about it there, it's for me it's like, and I don't want to do that thing of sort of going, oh, it's so difficult to talk about, so I'm not going to release it. I want to release it, but it's just that matter of I know it needs looking at again and it needs tweaking because I want the story to flow in a certain way and tell the story, but at the same time make people sort of look at it and be like we were just talking about that film. I don't want to come off as ignorant or not caring. It's very much that I want to write something and perform something that is makes people go sit in their seat.
I would say, to be honest with you, I would. I'm very diplomatic and I'm very. I like to kind of try and take a bird's eye view from things, and I would say that something along those lines is needed because people know that those kind of situations have existed or in some ways are still existing, and someone needs to basically come out and pull the plug and be like, it was like this in the 90s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what you're doing. You're not saying that you're still that same person, but you're shedding a light on, you know, a part of your lifetime, and you know, an experience that ultimately was the system conditioning you to behave a certain way.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of it. And I think it needs a little bit of tweaking, but eventually, yeah, I'd like to sort of I'd like to roll that out and put it forward to theatres. Since I've been dabbling in other writing, just trying to create little stories, I guess. Like I have this fella downstairs who's called Leroy, and he literally will just shout. He just shouts when the weather's nice outside. You know Leroy's out because he's just going to start. He's smashed and he's just shouting. And the thing is, it's like it's a mixture of like, ah, fuck you, and it would be like the other day I heard him. It makes me laugh so often because then he'll just suddenly be going, everybody singing YMCA, and it's like you just don't know where he's going to go with it.
I love it.
Yeah, and I think I kind of wanted to sort of look at something like that because it's sort of there's a mixture of like sad and beauty and funny in there, and it's like
there's a story behind, you know, perhaps the alcoholism and things like that, and
exactly.
But also, I mean, even in his own keeping, day-to-day keeping, you know, you can see his own efforts as well as, you know, trying to keep his mood up and to have his little party and stuff.
And it's great. And I thought that's sort of something that I was like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, I don't know what I wanted to do, but sort of just trying to document what he says at the moment.
Yeah, nice.
So
So
yeah,
you're
that's
doing some research and getting some inspiration.
yeah.
And that's lovely. I like that. That's nice. So in terms of your influences or some of your processes as a writer, are there any other things that you're kind of tailoring yourself to do at the moment?
So at the moment, writing wise, I'd probably say I tailor myself to more towards things that I relate to. Um, and I think that's because it's something that I can write about. So I want to try and write a story that I'm very daunted by, but also it's about my girlfriend's brother who was non-verbal autistic, and I'd like to write something about that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a story that I feel very passionately about, and something that could be told in a way that basically I want to write like sort of a love letter. And I have written it a couple of times, and there's a couple of drafts sitting in my laptop just waiting to sort of be revisited. It's that thing of I haven't got any writing experience. I took up writing a year or two ago because I wanted to start creating more. And I found I wasn't getting auditions and I wasn't getting work. So I wanted to sort of dabble in creating more in a different way. And I love theatre and I love film, and I'd love to make more things. And that's not just writing, that's directing.
Yeah. Is this when you started going to the group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
About that.
I'm part of a company called Director's Cut, which is a mixture of new and old writers, directors, and actors. And it's kind of like a drama school, but it's not. Like, I think they kind of label themselves as that to get people through the door, to get people more interested. But they audition you to get in, and then once you're in for life. Like you can duck and weave in between seasons, terms. That's right. Word.
Yeah.
And yeah, you get to work with new writers and new directors and just create your own work, and it's quite interesting. So for instance, I'm now working on this piece called Pinguism, with a few people from that, with a director and a couple of actors, and that's sort of looking at how cults, like sort of a mockumentary type thing. And we're now at that stage where we've workshopped it so much that we now want to sort of meet up with each other and finish writing getting this thing written, and now maybe make like a small snippet to submit to sort of go, this is our idea.
Yeah.
It's about cults. It's a mockumentary type thing, and I don't want to go into it too much because obviously I don't want anyone stealing it.
No, of course. Yeah. This sounds very good. Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of, it would be us acting, but at the same time we'd be documenting. So it'd be sort of looking at how farcical it could be, but at the same time, like I think. So, for instance, I heard about this cult recently that was called the Orgasm Cult, and it's immediately as you say it, you're like, "What? There's a cult? Just sign me up!" Like, it sounds ridiculous, but there's this whole cult, and I haven't done my research into it yet, but I want to because obviously it's quite I can relate with it, but
I think I know this. I'm sorry, but I think I've heard about this.
Yeah, so there's about a group of women trying to achieve an orgasm better, and basically it's evolved into this whole thing, and then it became a cult, and then there's now this whole the FBI is looking into it about like sexual harassment, all sorts, and it's hilarious, but at the same time these people have been abused, so it's kind of.
I'm sorry, no, I'm just laughing at the fact that the story that it took.
Yeah, no, and it's so I think that's the thing that we're looking at is like how we can sort of focus in on that, of how a small thing can just evolve into something that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the type of cults that have been here before, I think that one's sort of more what we're trying to hit. But it's quite interesting at how things have just sort of can just spiral out of control and just suddenly become this whole gathering of people that are all just so interested in this one thing.
Absolutely. It makes me think of the GameStop and the Robin Hood thing from last week on the stocks and shares. That's what it makes me,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's like a subreddit cult that were like, let's get this
let's get back
down,
in
let's
big
take
man.
some head
Yeah,
fund. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, but it
I
was
find
really interesting. And Robin Hood, they've managed to raise $3.2 billion.
yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, that story. I mean, I don't know if it will save GameStop, but I think it's very much that whole idea of just trying to stop people banking on a company failing is just it's a nice thing to watch.
Yeah.
Like just sort of seeing, I hope it does help out that company, because it kind of reminds me of just like how the high street is disappearing.
Yeah. Have you been kind of looking through other mediums for inspiration and stuff?
For
Well,
that,
for your the various projects that you're working on.
yeah, I think I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of different types of mediums. So for instance, I have got a show reel at the moment, though I've done a variety of work. It's all just disappeared for some reason. I have no idea why. So I've just been doing research into scenes recently, which is quite interesting. And I've watched, it sounds stupid, but just watching TV shows and watching films and just trying to go, can I do that? Is that suitable for me? And I think I do a lot with writing as well. I think to some of my friends are great writers, and I would love to aspire to be to their level, and what they're doing already. And I think that's something that I find quite interesting is the fact that I have friends that are already in the industry doing it, and I think that's something that's
That's
inspirational as
really
well.
nice, yeah.
Um,
But I mean, your work sounds very inspirational. You're touching on so many prominent topics.
yeah, I think that's a
I
little bit.
can
Go on.
No, sorry, go ahead.
That's a little bit my problem. I have very much a breadth of things that I work on, but not I need to work on, like, make myself a bit more concise and just work one at a time. But yeah, my brain doesn't really work like that.
No. I don't think that you need to put that pressure on yourself to do that, because I think there are many artists, and I think the creative mind needs to be able to put things down, to go away, to then go back to being a sponge and taking in all of the stimuli from their environment, to then go back. I think you do that, but with the pressure of trying to focus, you ultimately kind of switch yourself off and cause the time to be elongated for a specific project. Going back to it, setting times. I do it when I'm writing papers or something. I'll know a deadline, or I'll give myself a deadline, and I'll say, okay, I've got 12 weeks till this deadline. Every Monday at so and so time, I'm going to put an hour into this, half an hour even. And honestly, like, Google Assistant has been like my best friend, because I'm not going to say, but I'm like, do a timer for like 30 minutes. And I know in that 30 minutes, I've got to do as much as I can, blah, 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 right? And then when that timer goes off, I'm like, right, either break or whatever. And it's so good, because you are very much like snap, snap, snap. Because when and I think maybe it's an ADHD thing, but no, seriously, but when you know that you have a timer and you have a time limit to like do that one task, there is no error for, like, there's no room for error, or there's no room for like procrastination. Whereas if you are giving yourself that free for reign, you're like, oh yeah, I can spend 2 months on this project and it's fine. And then you get down to like the last day before the deadline, you're like, what did I do? Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't put too much pressure on yourself. And my personal advice would just be to maybe like break it down into bite size, but also, hold yourself accountable for the time that you're going to be giving to it and make that a regular thing. Yeah, just like, your exercise and everything else that you love doing, and your cooking and stuff like that. So yeah, but definitely you'll have to keep us up to date with what happens with the projects, and share some of your other works that you've done that we can kind of find in the links below, and we'll add some of those links in, and people can go and kind of check out what you've done. We'll add your socials down below in the links. People can go and find you. If there's anyone that you kind of want to give a shout out to, or for other people to kind of go and check out some of your inspirational kind of folk, who would they be?
So there's a few people that come to mind. Grace Ofri-Atta, she's a brilliant writer, and she has been writing for a variety of things, but one of the TV series that she did was In the Long Run, which is a comedy series with Idris Elba, which is great. My friend Luke Shenton Sharp, he has been writing with a friend of his, and they have recently released a short film. So if you type it like Luke Shenton Sharp and go to his socials, you'll find that. I can't remember.
You can send me all the stuff and I'll put it down below.
There's another friend of mine, Maximus Pumi, and he has made his own. He put on an exhibition recently. He is a fellow exhibitionist, and he put on an exhibition with Africa. What if each African country had their own space program?
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, that's so fun. I bet that was so good.
Yeah, so he made hoodies and material for that.
Yeah.
He sold all his work, and he did that in Mexico. But that was really interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a really interesting project that he had done. And he's got his own like small, so like he does like Lego and like all like big name brands, but then he like turns them into what African things would, like African foods or culture things.
Lovely.
Yeah, he's got a whole t-shirt, whole line of that. And then there's my other friend who, Samuel Turpin, who's an artist, and he's been creating his own type of work for years. He's just been making a catalogue of it. I do say to him that he needs to put it on so people can see it, but he's putting it on Instagram and things like that. So it's his work ethic is such that I do admire. Like, he's quite edgy in that sense.
Yeah, lovely.
So yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for that, and thank you for coming on. And it's just been such a nice time to kind of find out more about your projects and what you're doing, and a lovely chat. And I wish the best for Liverpool.
Well,
I can say that because Arsenal are 10th, so I can wish the best for you, because really, I mean, as long as we, as long as we're like still top 10 at this rate, that's all I care about. But yeah, no. Right, it's more pressure for you guys because it's reigning champions, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a horrific season with injuries and everything, and that's not an excuse. It should be better than what it is, but yeah, it's just a series of unfortunate events, and I think it just happens to most clubs. I think you look at teams that have been amazing in the past, and they've had this run of like 3 to 4 years, and then they do have a drop off, and I think this is just a drop off year, and I'm hope that they come back stronger next year. I think this year is just an aim for top 4, but that's a little bit of a worry because everyone's very good at the moment in the Premier League.
Very good, yeah, surprisingly good. But if you haven't, I do recommend to check out Red Men TV.
I have, yeah, I follow Red Men TV.
I love them. I mean, I don't know if it's obvious by now, but I'm a bit of a football head. So I go into other people's channels because I think the people and the commentary are great, and I just love the chat. And it's Redmen TV is amazing. So
I watched the kickoff quite a bit. They
the
do.
kickoff is great as well, isn't it? Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen Poet and Vudge.
No, I've not seen that.
Yeah, they're great. They've got like a football podcast that they do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so they're really, really good. But yeah, I would shout out some Arsenal people. But you're not going to watch that.
Fan TV is always a laugh to watch because of how angry everyone gets on it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Charles Watsey and is it Nick Bright as well? I like them. They're good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also going to say, I felt like
obviously the obvious AFTV stuff, but we know them already.
Yeah. I was going to say before because you sound like you were wrapping up a minute ago.
I am, and now I've gone off on a tangent.
No, absolutely fine, because I was going to just say you sent me like a few like fun questions, and I just felt like I was quite serious, and that's just not.
Well, no, we did. Yeah, well, I mean,
say like
tell us what.
You asked me like what are my favorite cartoons, and I was like,
what are your favorite cartoons?
So,
I know you've got Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, I've got Dragon Ball Z thing.
The thing was, I was going to ask you about this, and then we got into a whole chat, and I totally forgot. Because I was like, oh, when I first saw it, like when you were kind of like moving on the chair, I saw it, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's super exciting. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I love Dragon Ball Z. The Samurai Jack. First lockdown, I found Samurai Jack. I think it was on like Channel 4 or something.
Yeah.
Binge.
Have you seen Cowboy Bebop?
No, I've not seen.
You like, so Bebop is obviously Bebop, but if you like Samurai Jack, you will like Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very much like, I kind of wanted to just say that, like I'm very much like a kid, and I think that's something that I like to bring. I could very much like, I enjoy that, having a laugh with work, and having a bit of fun, and trying to just enjoy yourself when you're doing something, and like
it's really, really important. And I think this is one part of creativity and engaging with our imagination, is that we need to go back to our inner child and reconnect with our inner child every single time. It's not about you reconnect and then you lose it because you have to be adulting, but it's it's something that we can have there all the time, and nobody should kind of criticize us for wanting to do that. Of course, we have the responsibilities of an adult life, but we can, as creative folks, and everyone has creativity in them. It's not hard.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's like, for instance, one of my friends was saying that, like, creative wise, she's got into crochet and she's absolutely loving it. So
amazing.
She's finding it meditative.
Doing pottery on Instagram the other day.
Something like myself, like that's why I cook as well. Like I doing sourdough bread. It's just something really nice, because it just sort of allows you just sort of do it, and it's just sort of like kneading dough is really meditative.
Oh, it's so therapeutic. I love that. I made a cake yesterday. I thought that was great. It's like the first cake that I've made in lockdown, and I thought, why haven't I done this before? I was just like there doing the thing, and I was like, oh, this is amazing.
It's nice because it doesn't take much of your time. Well, sourdough does. It takes about 2 to 3 days if you do it, but it's sort of such a slow process. But with like baking and things, I think it's so nice because you have this almost instantaneous gratification of like, you work on something for an hour and you've got something to show for it. And I think that's the thing that maybe I know for myself is, like, you just need it occasionally. You need something to just sort of go, I did that, and that's like, and you may not have done anything all day. Like, I've had days where I've just sort of not even had a shower, but I've made a cake.
Everyone's done it. I'm sure everyone's done it in lockdown. Like, and it shouldn't. It's not even a thing, but absolutely, and it is those days where you kind of have to maybe just disengage and do something that's so simple, and like you said, brings that instant gratification, where you're like, oh, I love life again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But Jack, this has been really, really nice and really heartwarming, and thank you so much. And it's always nice to catch up with you.
Thank you very much for having me, Kim. It's been nice to
chat. It's been really nice. Okay, so we'll see you soon, and we'll catch up, and I'll come and be nosy, and we'll find out again and what's happening very, very soon.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good one. See you soon.
Bye. Bye.